Like those guys in Colorado.
All right.
Another question on who said that. We're from Texas, a very conservative, awesome state. My house speaker is Strauss, and Strauss did not pass conservative legislation. He passed liberal things, and my legislation votes him in. So that would make me concerned. He also has foreigners who is not representing me well, Texas is not representing me well, and Washington D.C. So what is my comfort level? I really conservative state of Texas sends truly conservative people who will honor the intent of the Constitution. I understand, the stuff about they'll be called back, but who's saying why they're called back? Is it we the people, or is it the people that are elected?
Well, even though you have Strauss as your leader in the House, it's passed the Texas Constitution. So there's kind of proof in the pudding. You got this through the Texas House. So the question, you're responsible for who you elect here. One of the reasons the founders wanted you to be in charge and one of the state legislators to be the most powerful is because you have more power over them than the other one in our session.
And with more power, we haven't been able to get a better speaker. So I think that's a concern. I don't know what to do with.
Good. So your answer is, since you have that problem, don't do anything.
No, my answer is how am I going to overcome that? I'm a precinct chairman. I'm involved in a lot of things. I do everything I know how to do, and I'm working against people who support Strauss.
So, as an outsider who knows Texas politics pretty well, this is my home away from home. Here's the good news: your legislature is getting better, right? And it is getting better. Look, your Senate got pretty good,
yes,
right? And your House is getting better and better. And what we're seeing is leadership is getting peeled away one by one, right? The onion layers around leadership. It's happening slowly but surely. There's a war going on. It's not unique to Texas, by the way. This is really important. When I travel around the country, I'll tell you, here's what everybody thinks about Texas politics. You guys are red state nirvana, right? You have achieved perfection here. I understand that's not the case, but the good news is, nationally what's going on, you've got 31 states with both houses controlled by Republicans. The red states are getting redder. The purple states are moving red. The blue states are moving to the center. So we're headed in the right direction. And ultimately, it's about the whole country. And the whole country is more conservative than it's been in a very long time. So I'm not so worried about Texas individually or Oklahoma or California. The country is at the right moment.
Yes, you send us to the Texas House, so that's done. We're here for convention of states. If Joe Strauss is not a proper speaker for the House, then he needs to be replaced in an election. The subject at hand is convention of the states. It's been passed in the Texas House, correct? And we know Governor Abbott is for it, very much so. What's the hold up in your Senate, if any?
Right, so we have to start over because they don't have what's called a holdover. Some states hold over. So that means next cycle we'll start again in the House. I don't think we're going to have a problem in the House. We had a few senators that were a problem this last cycle that held us up. And I actually think that most of them are going to come around. Frazier was one of them, and he's retired. And, I think we've made a lot of progress with the other two who held us up. I don't think we're going to have a problem in this next session. I think come your next session, we're just going to get it done.
God bless George Mason.
Absolutely.
This is a huge effort. This sort of reminds me of the efforts to ratify the Constitution originally, where you had to go state by state to make the case for why the Constitution should be approved. One of the huge stumbling blocks to this that I see is the inevitable opposition of the liberal news media in conjunction with the money elites in both parties opposing this, because this goes to the core of threatening the status quo. Have you thought through the media strategy and the national messaging that we're going to have to mount to rally enough people to make this succeed? Well, I'll let Mark answer that. I'll answer both. That didn't sound like it.
Sounded good though.
Well, we're going to give you two answers to the same problem. Right? Mark's going to tell you the strategy. I'm going to tell you what's happening. People in this country don't care what the media says.
Amen. Hallelujah. I hope that's true. I mean,
We don't. Political, powerful, beliefs say.
I would make to believe that they're alive.
We're in the
They're selling it.
right now. 4 million plus active volunteers. It doesn't matter how much media we see. Now, we do have a plan. I'm not involved in it. I'm out here to get the grassroots going and get work on legislation. But Mark and the team has a communication strategy, have a plan. We've already run some radio ads and TV ads in places where we thought it would do us some good. We actually even hire lobbyists where we think it will do us some good. So there is a plan. But the point is it doesn't have to be nationwide. What it has to be is 34 state legislators passing a joint resolution that doesn't require the governor, doesn't require the judges to do anything. And once that happens, it's over. There's going to be a convention of states. So,
something happened in the last couple of weeks which I thought was pretty extraordinary, which is the left all of a sudden stood up and took notice. Right, and to be honest with you, I didn't expect that to happen so soon. I figured we'd get to 20, 25 states before they took it seriously. USA Today wrote a just scathing op-ed against what we were doing. It was one of the most ignorant tirades I've ever seen in and had no understanding of Article 5, how it works. It's written by somebody maybe hasn't even read that article of the Constitution. So they did it this last week. Common Cause, which is one of George Soros's main funding groups, came out with a piece against Article 5. So they're starting to unite, right? I was in the New Mexico legislature. We saw Common Cause and Sierra Club. This is something I didn't expect to see. I think it came out of radio endorsement and then Governor Abbott endorsement. That happened when we started paying attention. So, but here's the real strategy. I'm going to agree with a lot of what Tom says, which is the mainstream media isn't so important anymore because we are the media. Okay, so all over the country, that's what's happening. Tamara, who you met earlier, is training state media liaisons in every state in the country. These are folks that know the media in their own state. They know the newspaper editors in the big and small towns. They know the radio producers. And so we're able to get our message out no matter what the mainstream media says to us. And when it comes time, we have the capacity and the wherewithal to do major national media. We did a major blitz on the Mark Levin show a while back. We're very frugal about how we spend our money. We did a test run on Mark for 1 quarter and went really well. But we don't need to spend that money right now. When the time comes, we'll spend the money. There are donors who support us. By the way, right now we're pushing close to 50,000 donors from all around the country. So we will have the resources we need. I do not underestimate the war that will be. It will be a war. You're right. We're going right at the jugular of the beast.
We'll take them. Yeah.
Seems today that the minority is ruling over the majority. The Republicans control House and Senate. In a way, refusing to combat the Obama administration's violations of the balance of power. Will the Constitution of states polarize the liberal minority to cause major civil unrest? And if so, what are we doing to combat the risk?
Well, good question. First of all, it's not a constitution of the states, it's a convention of the states. That's very important because one of the opponents, several of the opponents of this movement say you're going to have a constitutional convention. We're not.
Wrong.
We're going to have a convention of the states, which means we're very specific in the area in which we're going to have options to amend them. So that's number one, it's very limited. Not also, though, it's broad enough to address the ills that ail us today.
Yeah.
The second thing, I would say, and to your question, if we don't do this, we're going to have real problems. And I've got a 21 and I've got a pretty good ear for people. You know, I've delivered 4,500 babies. I got to know something. I for sure know women. I was raised by 4 of them, my 2 daughters and my wife. And what I will tell you is we're in a very dangerous time. People are at the edge. And so let me just give you an example. What happened in Oregon? Now those guys out there violated federal statute, there's no question about it. They were in the wrong. But what they were trying to accomplish was right. So you've already seen the first vestiges of anarchy because of an overreaching federal government. And so people are in jail today, and rightly so. But if we don't do this, you're going to see a whole lot more of that. And I can tell you, I don't dare say in public what I really think about that, because I'm really worried that we won't solve our problems peacefully, and that we'll do another method. And this is the way we keep that from happening.
Also, I want to add that,
I'm not sure that they said they can
we're
go
talking about liberal versus conservative, so we're dealing with a partisan ideology. 71% of Americans today say that the federal government is too big and does too much. There aren't 71% of Americans that are Republicans or even self-identified conservatives. I speak in Austin, Texas. I speak in Berkeley, California, San Francisco, Marin, some of the most liberal places in the country. And when I ask folks there, do you want Washington, D.C. to decide, or do you want to decide? You know what they say? Us. I don't. It doesn't matter what their ideology is. It doesn't matter what their party affiliation is. Got good friends in Berkeley, California, and they want to decide for themselves. So the issue of convention of states is really important that we keep this clear. It's not about partisanship. It's not about a party. I'm not a registered member of any party. In California, I have the glamorous title of declared or undecided, right? I'm confused. But the real deal is when you talk to Americans, I was in 34 states last year, they're all frustrated with the federal government. They don't believe that they're duly represented in Washington, D.C. And this is the unifying theme. The question facing America today is not what should we do, it's who decides. I trust the American people to decide, especially in state legislatures, county boards, close to home. That's where I really trust the American people. So I don't think this divides us. I actually think it unites us.
Amen.
Thank you. I'm Bill Thorson, and I'm all in, so please screen my remarks and hoping for a good outcome. What concerns me is how we some people are together and get into dialogue as the Constitution is being written. And I believe those letters were published in the news so people could keep up and have input. And I was hoping there would be some kind of a public accessible wiki with problem statements, critical success factors, specifications, and proposed wording. I just was wondering how, are we going to be able to monitor the process as these amendments start to take shape?
Great question.
Yeah, I think that's a great. By the way, in the original convention, they actually sequestered themselves. Everything was secret. They covered the windows. They weren't allowed to talk to anybody.
What were the do-good letters?
Not familiar with that. So maybe there were some leaks, but the reality was they were sequestered. That's not possible today with all the digital media we have. I imagine it's going to be like the Super Bowl of politics. I think there will be cameras on the convention floor. These guys are going to be texting and tweeting and Instagramming and periscoping. The legislatures are going to be involved in what's going on. They're going to be watching their delegates every minute of every day. And most of the legislatures I've been to, they say their intent is to be live streaming and have a committee that watches it every time, every moment these guys are in session. So I expect it is going to be political spectacle, and we will know every second of every proceeding there.
I would hope there's also some discipline with the long running dialogue versus just the tweets and Facebook.
Well, I think folks are just going to be watching it live is what's going to be happening. So, yeah.
I don't think that manages the process very good, and that was my point. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Coburn, when I got married, I used to go to that little redhead girl. They told me about you, and I started watching it pretty attentively through C-SPAN and YouTube broadcasts and whatnot. I think you did your due diligence in Washington. And I think you did right by the people that put you in office. And I want you to know that the K's and Germans appreciate so much the stand you took while you were there. You're brought up quite often around the dinner table when we're doing family dinners. But my question is, so we pursue the Commission of States, we have it, we make the changes. How do we begin to even pay off $140 trillion of unfunded liability? There's not that much money in print. There's not even close to that much money in print. Yeah, how do you propose we go about doing that? And then also, the other question kind of hand in hand with that is, what about the Federal Reserve? We've got a private organization that's printing money at its own leisure. Is that going to be something that's going to be addressed as well? Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words and from your family. They're dear to me. Know them well. I don't think it's hard to solve our problems. But what I think it takes is courage, one, and number two, it takes sacrifice by everybody. Everybody. It's a great book, if you haven't read it, written by Marvin Milasky, called The Tragedy of American Compassion. You recognize what's happening in our country. We've undermined self-reliance. That's what all socialist countries do first, and created dependency. But we also have a Social Security system that allows somebody like me to draw Social Security, when in fact it's $27 trillion in the home.
That's pretty nice.
Well, it's ridiculous. I can make it without it. So I ought to be sacrificing that, right? So where's the leadership in our country that calls on us to sacrifice? I mean, that's what made this country great, was sacrifice. It wasn't perfect. The first Constitution had fatal errors in it, right? And we corrected those. Now we have a court that totally ignores the Constitution. So can we solve those problems? You bet. Are they solvable? But we have to have leadership, and we have to have rules so that we don't fall back into the exact same thing. The $400 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse, that would have put us in surplus right now. When I was past president. We would have had that limit. Federal employees, some of you may be here. Department of Economic Analysis, you make 77% all in more than the average American. Wow. 77% more for working for the federal government? That can't be right. So federal employees will have to sacrifice some.
Right.
So everybody has to sacrifice. Oklahoma's a recipient state. Texas is a donor state. Oklahoma's going to have to give up something. Right? Yes.
Give up those pretty lakes.
So the point is, we don't even have the discussion about solving those problems in Congress. They're not even being discussed by the presidential candidates. No, they're afraid to talk about it. No, we can't do that anymore. Whether we do convention of states or not, eventually the money men are going to buy this. Right? And it's going to continue until it doesn't. And then what's going to happen is that we're approaching over and over. So we don't want to get there. We're still the world's reserve currency. I don't like the Federal Reserve any more than you do. I think what they've done has been atrocious, but I don't see they get out of that unless we fix some of the problems first. And you have to give them one kudo. Monetary policy won't fix a nation when you don't have any fiscal policy to go along with it.
Right.
And Congress all this time, during the Bush administration, during the Obama administration, has not given them one bit of fiscal policy to help control the problem.
Good question. A lot of people say that the is on the way. I'm not going. When we get to convention.
Well, first of all, the runaway was based on what they claimed was federal authority. All right? So let's just debunk that there was a federal runaway in the first one. Of the 13 representative states there, 11 came with specific instructions to do whatever you need to do to the Article of Confederations to fix this. 2 states, Massachusetts and New York, were 2 that did not have that complete instruction. New York never voted again after the New Jersey compromise failed. 2 of their members left one state, but they never voted again. The only other one was Massachusetts, which said, we limit what you do. When it was brought to Massachusetts, Massachusetts fully agreed with the delegates that they did the right thing. So there was no runaway convention. The second thing that's really silly about that is the very people that claimed that we had a runaway convention now love that Constitution so much that we shouldn't try to fix it. That runaway one that was out of control, they don't think we should take a chance and use that Constitution to actually fix our country. So, it's schizophrenic in its thinking at best.
So I'm going to add a little bit of procedure to that, just to get a little bit technical with you guys so you understand how the process works. Very briefly, so the states file applications. The applications are identical from all the states. They limit the authority of the convention to speak to 3 subject matter areas: restraining the federal government on a fiscal basis, restraining the scope and jurisdiction of the federal government, and the third is imposing term limits on the federal government, including, by the way, the Supreme Court and the federal government.
Woo!
That's the basic law of convention. So when your delegates go to convention, each delegate they're actually called commissioners. Each commissioner is given something called a commission. It's a piece of paper that says what they do or don't have the authority to do. Now, I assume your legislature is going to elect people that they believe will follow their instructions. They're going to send people that they know and people that they trust to follow the instructions they're given. They're going to go to convention, and in convention, they're going to be in a convention with a bunch of people who were given similar instructions from their own legislatures. Now, let's assume a delegate gets out of control and raises their hand and says, I want to talk about the Second Amendment and repealing the Second Amendment. Any other delegate in there, somebody from Oklahoma or Texas, can raise their hand and say, excuse me, that's not germane to this convention, that's out of order. Right? Do you not think the conservative states are going to go crazy if people start talking about the Second Amendment? It's out of order. Right? So it's not legal. And let's say that all of them are drinking some amazing Kool-Aid in convention. Right? Nobody raises their hand and says anything. Now you have to believe in order to believe in order. You got to believe that your legislature is not watching. Right? I don't know, it's a 6-month-long Super Bowl Sunday and nobody's paying attention. Because if your legislature sees their delegates getting out of control, they're going to text them or call them on the phone and say, you can't do that, you can't say that, we're calling you home, we've just revoked your authority. But let's assume that the Kool-Aid is being drunk in every legislature around the country. They're not doing that, they're not paying attention to their delegates. So then you still have to get 26 states, the majority of the delegations, to pass something out of convention that we wouldn't like. Right? Something out of convention with 26 states. Now remember, 31 states, both houses controlled by Republicans right now. So you have to get 26 states to do something that we really didn't like, that limits our liberty. Then it goes out to the states. Now remember, they've exceeded their authority from the convention. They've violated their commissions. And guess what? A miracle happens. There's not a single conservative lawyer in America who stands up and says anything about that. This is what you have to believe. So the lawyers have all gone to sleep. They're all drinking the same Kool-Aid. And now it goes out and it still has to be ratified by 38 states. Still, the 13 most conservative states in America can stop anything that they want to. And remember, so you've got to believe, if you believe they're not going to do that, no conservative folks in America, are you guys going to stand up if they try to repeal the Second Amendment?
I think so.
I think so, right? And Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity and every conservative legislator in America. So this idea that there could be a runaway is literally structurally, factually, and numerically impossible.
Excellent. Thank you.
That really sounds good. However, you can try to be fun plantation with all these certain states that we have done here. And so there is that possibility, remote as it may be, that when they get into convention, those who are in the convention can change the rules
of the convention, like they did at first. And that's how we got the Constitution that we have today. Thank God we did it, we got it. But that is a possibility, and we must be honest enough to say that that is indeed a possibility. The other thing is this that I wanted to point out, is that one of the duties of the sovereign state is to restrain the federal government to the restricted limitations specified to it within the Constitution. So there is an alternative here that you guys have not mentioned. It is the duty of the sovereign state to stand between its citizens and an out-of-control federal government. I think you would agree to that. And particularly as it is articulated in Federalist 78.
It didn't work in the Civil War.
Alexander Hamilton said this, that if there is no principle that is clearer, that when any delegated authority goes contrary to the tenor of the commission, that which they do is null and void before it leaves Washington, D.C. and comes to the state of Texas. It is void. So therefore, the state of Texas and its legislators and its magistrates who swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Texas must declare that any extra constitutional action on the part of the federal government, and those of you who are lawyers, and you are one, know that extra constitutional means illegal, gone beyond the enumerated duties specified to it within the Constitution, is void. It's called interposition and nullification. Respond to that, please.
Fantastically well stated. We very appreciate your knowledge of history. The problem that we have in the argument that I would have with you on that is correct, that is extra constitutional, and therefore you can practice interposition or potentially nullification if you want to go that direction. But the problem with that is you're presuming that the Constitution that we have in place is the Constitution as drafted by the founders. Unfortunately, according to our history of jurisprudence, the actual Constitution that we have in place is the 2,000-page document. And all these things that we claim are extra constitutional are actually, today, considered constitutional according to that 2,000-page document. So the specific example, the best example that I know, and one of my greatest frustrations with our current Constitution, as it's contained in that 2,000-page document, is the Interstate Commerce Clause. That was a very narrowly drafted federal enumerated power designed to address a particular problem. Right? A couple of states were close to military blows, New York and New Jersey, and so they gave them the power to regulate interstate commerce. In 1787, the word regulate meant regularize. It's different. We think of regulate now, so the federal government has to throttle down and control everything. They meant to smooth it out and make everything work really well, as the states did what? Commerce in 1787 meant the shipment of goods. It was designed to give the federal government the power to control the shipment of goods across state lines so as to regulate and regularize that commerce. Today, the Supreme Court is interpreting through a series of decisions, culminating in a decision which said that a farmer growing wheat for the consumption of his own family and his own livestock was engaged in interstate commerce. Because he wasn't buying wheat, that's now commerce, so there's this vast power. And that power has been deemed constitutional by the Supreme Court. And so the problem with that is that is our Constitution. And we might be able to use interposition if something wasn't contained in there that the federal government did. And on the issue of nullification, this is the problem I have with nullification philosophically. So there's all kinds of arguments. Is it constitutional? Is it not constitutional? We can get into a lot of detail that would bore everybody who's not a lawyer. Here's the problem with nullification, practically speaking. The federal government passes hundreds, and if you include regulations, thousands of laws every year. How much fight do we have in us? Are we going to fight thousands and thousands? Are we going to nullify thousands of regulations every year? I'd posit to you, they have an army of highly paid folks in Washington, D.C. who make it their career to pass these laws day in and day out. I love my children. I don't want them fighting the same fight next year, and 10 years, and 20 years, and 50 years, and 100 years from now. What I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do, is actually craft a permanent, or at least semi-permanent solution to the problems that face the nation.
Just one other comment on nullification. If we nullify it in Texas, it's not nullified in Oklahoma. And if you nullify it, you're going to get challenged. And so then now you're gonna be in a court case on whether your nullification was accurate. Yeah, I mean, that's the practical aspect. And here's the other thing. You got 168,000 things you gotta nullify if you wanna get back to the original Constitution. 168,000 regulations and laws that you have to get back to the original Constitution. We'll never get that done. You might get it done here in Texas. I don't mess with Texas. You might get it done. Oklahoma, we'll never get it done. And so we'll all move to Texas.
Hold on. Personally, you don't want all these Californians moving to Texas. It won't work out well.
The Cloward-Piven strategy was hatched by two Marxist professors. The strategy was to use the weight of the poor to bankrupt the country, which is what you're talking about, this 160, and at the end, this $168,000 or $1 trillion of debt. At the end, when it was bankrupt and the currency was debased, are you going to let them just, die in the streets, or are you going to save them? That was the whole strategy, was to intentionally bankrupt the country. And what would then have to happen? They would have to change fundamentally the government and change it towards socialism and Marxism. A list of if those of you who are actually interested go to movetoamerica.org, you're going to see a list of people, of organizations on the left who are endorsing this convention of states, along with George Soros, and we all know who he is. This convention of states is a monumentally horrid idea because the hundreds of organizations, Code Pink, Sierra Club, and several others.
I think there's over 200 on that list.
Okay, endorsing organizations for Move to Amend. .org. Go to it and you'll see who on the left is endorsing violating your Constitution.
So I've had this question 100 times if I've had it once. I would challenge you, and I'll bring you back to the microphone if you can do this before the end of the meeting. Find one of those, if you look at every single one of those websites, I've had interns doing this for the last few years, find one of those organizations on their website anywhere or in any statements they've issued that endorses the Convention of States project. One. And I'll bring you back. No, hold on a second. Let's be accurate in what we're talking about. What it says is they endorse the idea of calling a Convention of States. That's a very different thing. Right? So in other words, what a lot of those organizations would like to do, and they've now changed their position, by the way, Soros just came out and said this last week, but what they would like to do is call a convention to overturn the Citizens United decision. They would like to use Article 5 to overturn citizens. That's what they want to do. They can't do it under our application, and that's why you can't find a single organization that supports what we're doing. They're pretty smart. I mean, one thing I would say about George Soros is he's no dummy. Right? And if he thought that he could co-opt this movement, if the radical left thought they would co-opt this movement, you'd see all over the web the radical left co-opting what we're doing and endorsing what we're doing. And in fact, they go into, I'm telling you, I'm going to challenge you. Find on a single one of those organizations' websites an endorsement of the Convention of States project. This is important that we don't conflate the idea of people who want to use Article 5 with the Convention of States project. This is really important because, it's the same as voting, right? If you say, well, people on the left really encourage their folks to get out and vote, so we should stop encouraging our folks to vote, right? People on the left look to the Constitution, so we should tell our people not to look to the Constitution. The question is, Article 5 is a tool. The question is, what do you intend to use that tool for? And you cannot find a single group on the left in the United States of America today that supports the Convention of States project. It doesn't exist. I've been at that website 50 times. We have our interns look at it regularly. You're actually spreading misinformation. Again, I'm going to challenge you, and I'll give you the microphone. Come back, find on any one of those websites, anywhere, anytime, a group endorsing the Convention of States project. You can't find it because they're smart enough to know they can't use this project to get what they want. Right. So again, take the time, look at it. I'll give you the microphone back if you can find that. Any of those groups that support it.
America's got enough naysayers.
Convention of States project developed specific wording for specific amendments that are going to be under consideration. Almost answered my question when we were talking about this. I don't know about specific imposition notification, but I was wondering if there's specific wording that's going to be under consideration, or is the agenda not quite so precise?
There will be suggested wording on some amendments, but again, remember, this is an independent group that represents Texas and Oklahoma and every other state that does this. They'll give their own instructions. We have model amendments out there. We have model rules for the convention out there. We have model delegate limitation amendment strategy for the different houses in all the states. So it's all out there. The question is do we really know everything that we should be doing, or should we have a real national debate? And one of the great things about this is this isn't the only group that's concerned about what's going on in this country, right? It's all across this country. So what we want is this to flower into a real discussion about what the nation believes. Here's the limitation and range you can do it. What are the possibilities to fix it? And I'm not so bright to know that I know all the answers. What I know is Washington's never going to fix it. That's what I know.
Send them on.
Governor Abbott. Governor Abbott put forward 9 amendments that fit within our 3 areas and suggested Texas offered those amendments. Well, lots of people are going to suggest amendments that fit within those range, and then it'll be up to the commissioners to decide which ones they vote on, which ones they vote up, which ones they vote down. Sure.
Back to the question of interposition notification. Do you see any role whatsoever in what you think of as this movement for any kind of organized peaceful civil disobedience to federal overreach? Is there any role with that kind of thing at all?
Well, I do that every day. Look, our country and our kids are worth saving. This is a way our founders gave it to do it. I want to tell you, I'll be the first one out there if we aren't successful with this, doing it a different way if I'm still around. God gives me my liberty. This government doesn't. It takes it away. Nonviolent civil disobedience has a role, but not yet.
You're right numbers.
You know, before we go to you, I would argue that this is the ultimate act of nonviolent civil disobedience. The founders built it into the Constitution. Remember, these men were revolutionaries, right? They weren't pacifists sitting around waiting for the authorities to tell them what to do, and they built in a mechanism for specifically. I describe this as the most radical, reasonable, revolutionary solution, and the founders gave it to us. That microphone doesn't seem like it's working.
Speak to just 3 things, please. Let's assume that you can control this convention once it's convened. I believe that once Congress convenes it, you've lost control. Even to think that the states can control it, I believe that anything that the states have put out there, the supremacy clause of the Constitution over trumps that. But let's assume you can control it. Mark Levin has proposed 11 amendments. Your own counsel is on record as saying that they want to change 4 of the 7 articles in the Constitution. You just said Governor Abbott's got amendments, so just that right there scares me alone. If we could make sure that there was just one state, one vote, and everything was just going to be conservative there, that's one thing. And then if you could speak to the fact that you did a conference with Professor Larry Lessig in 2011 at Harvard, and the only 2 things you and he would have in common is that you both want to call a convention under Article 5. He's as far to the left as you can get and wants to rewrite the Constitution. He's on record as saying that. Thirdly, can you speak to the fact that there's 40+ bills that the Congress has offered in a 20-year period where they were trying to set the parameters of an Article 5 convention, and they wanted to make delegations based on apportionment.
Sure.
So it's a long list. I'll do my best to remember. And I'll work my way backwards. I'm getting old and feeble-minded, so I apologize. Would you stay up there so I can make sure I answer all your questions? So the first is, this is absolutely factual what you say. Congress, 40 times, somebody in Congress has proposed something saying that they can regulate convention. Tom, how many things get proposed in Congress that never see the light of day?
10,000, 20,000 a year.
Okay, 10 to 20,000 a year. Do you know how many times that there's been an affirmative vote by members of Congress that they had anything to do with controlling convention? 0. Never happened in American history. So to me, that's a fantastic statistic. A mere 40 times out of the 10,000 times a year Congress does something, some poor misguided soul 40 times has proposed that Congress has a role, and all 40 times it's never even come to a vote on the floor of Congress. So they understand very well that they have. Okay, never even gone into a committee. So they full well understand that they have absolutely no role to play in the process. So that's number one. I want to address the Lessig thing. So, well, that's just a fact. I mean, you can shake your head, but those are... Well, but Congress doesn't believe it, and there's no law that says it. The Constitution says differently. The founders said differently. Federalist Papers all said differently. So you can have a belief, but you need a basis in fact, and you can't...
Article 5 says Congress will convene the convention.
Oh, actually, that's not what Article 5 says.
Yes, it
Article
does.
5 says Congress shall call, not will. So that is ma'am, the law is about language. Language really matters. And when you look at the Constitution, language really matters. We wish they followed the language, right? Shall call is a ministerial duty of Congress acting as an administrator for the states. All they're doing is counting applications, and then they're required to make that call. In fact, the power of the sovereign states is so strong that all the state legislatures we're dealing with have taken the position that if Congress doesn't call, they'll call themselves and convene anyway. Right. So, our attitude about this whole thing from start to finish is we don't need no stinking Congress. So, Larry Lessig is a liberal law professor at Harvard Law. Believe it or not, they invited a redneck cowboy from Northern California to go speak at Harvard Law School, which I thought was one of the funniest things I ever heard. You can see this online if you want to know what she's talking about. Before I was engaged in the Article 5 movement to really make this change, I went to Harvard. I got invited to this conference to co-host this conference, and I was fascinated because I found, interestingly, there were people on the left that were in favor of using Article 5 and people on the right. And there were people on the left who were on the right who were in favor and opposed. So both sides of the aisle. So to me, it was really interesting because I felt like, wow, a chance to have an actual discussion about ideas instead of yelling at each other about ideology. It was really interesting. And if you listen to me at that conference, you can see my evolution on the issue. My position at the conference was neutral. And the reason I was neutral is because I actually didn't believe you could do it. It seemed like an intellectual exercise and interesting to talk about, but really, 34 states actually doing this, or all these legislatures, all this getting to a convention, it just didn't seem possible to me. Until Mike Ferris brought me this project and said, no, I have a plan, it's actually possible. And that's what convinced me that I should dedicate my life to doing this. So I make no apologies for going to Harvard. I mean, frankly, as conservatives, if we're not willing to go into the lion's den, then we abdicate the playing field, and I believe conservative ideas always prevail if we go articulate them in the lion's den. I think you have one more. Did you have one more question, or I did it?
You did. No more questions.
Yeah, the fact that your own council is on record saying they want to change 4 of the 7 articles of the convention, and then Mark Levin has 11. The fact that the conservative side has got so many.
Yeah, those are not about changing articles. That's not what those are about. These are people who are proposing amendments to bring the Constitution back to its original intent. Right. So it's not about changing articles, quote unquote. These are amendments, and I expect that when we get to convention, that each state will bring their own slate of amendments. There'll probably be hundreds of amendments discussed. I'm guessing there will be a handful that come out. My guess is probably 5, 7, 8. I don't know how many will ultimately come out. But I hope that people bring hundreds of amendments to discuss.
Your own council is on record as saying that it would.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I'd love to see it. Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
The legislature.
Yep, no problem. All right, thank you.
If I was on the hard left, and I wanted the progressive movement to move, would I want an Article 5 convention? No. Sure I would. I would want my Article 5 convention. And that's what people don't understand. Article 5 conventions will only be deemed as meeting the 34 threshold is if they're identical. Now, do you think Larry Lessig's going to support what we're offering, an Article 5 convention? No way.
Makes too much sense.
So do they want an Article 5? If they could get 34 states to agree with them, they'd do it in a minute.
Right.
To take your gun rights away, to make the government in control of all the rest of your life that they don't control right now. That doesn't mean that Article 5 as a tool is bad.
No.
It's only bad if it's in the wrong hands. And what people worry about is, have we got enough control to keep it out of the wrong hands? The answer is absolutely. And let me give it to you again. Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Kentucky, Indiana.
All equals common sense. Alaska. Common sense.
Alaska, yeah.
My question is a bit of a spin-off of what the young lady was just saying about whether Congress would take control of the convention, and here's my counter to you saying that there's no law. And I'm asking you, does this not give Congress control of it? Article 1, Section 8, the very last clause I have numbered is number 18. It says, Congress has the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States. Would that not give Congress the power to control the convention?
I want him to answer because I'm beginning to sound too much like a lawyer.
And that is embarrassing. If your interpretation of the necessary and proper clause is correct, which I would argue it's not, respectfully, then there is no Constitution. Then there are no enumerated powers. The founders would have been outraged by that interpretation of the necessary and proper clause because it essentially nullifies the enumerated powers and the limited structure of governance that they created. So I just don't think that's a correct interpretation of the necessary and proper clause. And no court has ever interpreted that broadly. And according to Rob Nadelson, the primary scholar on the issue, he says that the courts have specifically ruled otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you.
You mentioned a second constitution composed of court decisions. It's about 2,000 pages long. That, you know where we get it? Is there a copy of this in one place? Or is it
Yeah, you actually can, if you go online, it's kind of expensive, but it's called the Annotated Constitution.
Annotated Constitution?
Yeah.
Okay, second question. Is there a set of operating instructions and rules of procedure that the convention would have to follow?
Yeah, so the answer is yes and no. And this is really important. So the way the convention works is when a convention convenes, we have a long history for this, they will get together in a room. They will have no particular authority other than the authority granted to them by their own commissions and their own states as commissioners. And they'll get in there and they will elect their own officers in that convention. And then they will adopt a rule set. And so this is kind of important. What are the rules of convention going to be? And so what we have done is we've drafted a set of rules. I say we, that's an overstatement. Professor Rob Nadelson, the ultimate authority on Article 5 in the United States of America, has drafted a rule set. That rule set, generally speaking, is based on what are called Mason's rules. The vast majority of legislatures, about 75% in America, operate on Mason's rules. And then on top of that, we've drafted a few pages of very specific rules for convention. Those can be found at the Convention of States website. The goal, ultimately, is to have at least 26 states adopt those rules before we get to convention.
Okay. If a constitutional amendment gets out of the convention and a state votes one way or the other, either for or against, do they have the right to subsequently change their vote?
Well, first of all, to clarify the procedure, generally states don't vote for or against. So it's only going to come up in a state, historically, if they intend to ratify. Their goal is to ratify.
Let's say they don't vote to ratify, like in the Equal Rights Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
They change their mind.
Yeah, they can come back and decide to ratify, absolutely. As long as the amendment is outstanding, they can decide to ratify.
Does the amendment stay outstanding indefinitely or for 7 years?
It's up to the convention to set the term of ratification.
But there would be a fixed limit on when you have to act, or it ceases to be a proposed amendment.
Yeah, I would expect that the convention will set a term for ratification.
but not all have permits that are outstanding right now.
That's correct. So the best example, a lot of people don't realize is, we had the Bill of Rights, 10 amendments, it's actually 12. Right, the first one that the founders thought was most important was no federal income tax. That was number one.
Let's bring it
We said
back.
freedom of speech, but that was number one. Number two was the fixing of pay of the federal government, in which you can't raise or lower the pay of sitting legislatures or the president, and that sat out there for 200 years roughly before it was ratified as the 27th. So, but the convention, I expect, based on history, is going to set a term of ratification. We're going to go over here. By the way, we got about 5 minutes left, guys, so we probably won't be able to get to everybody, but we'll move as fast as we can through the last two.
I'll try to be brief. To get away from the mechanics of the convention itself, I'd like to make an observation. You have rightly observed that we continue to elect new leaders and new representatives, and there's no change. And the reason is they don't abide by their oaths to uphold the Constitution. So the question I have is, why do you think the politicians would abide by these new amendments of these new pieces of paper when they don't abide by the current ones? I think you're selling a false hope. There's a better way, and that's to elect godly men who will uphold the Constitution and our representative form of government.
Well, first of all, I would tell you that your assumption is wrong. They do uphold their oath to the Constitution. It's the one that the judges have given us. Just think about it.
It's just a different constitution.
They're not watching enumerated powers because the courts have said the enumerated powers don't count anymore. Right? So, having been there, look, I've used this on everybody up there. Why would you violate your oath when it comes to spending money? I actually used the old enumerated powers. That's how I blocked $750 billion worth of spending. I said, if you want to get past me, then you got to show me where it's in the enumerated powers. So let's say I'm wrong and that they don't. Tell me how we're going to get these wonderful members of Congress that are going to be there, and you're going to have 60 in the Senate and 218 in the House. By the time that happens, we'll be bellied up.
Well, let me ask, let's go back to the founders. The founders didn't believe what you just said. Right? If you look back at the convention, there were some scurrilous characters at that convention, right? It was not all Madison and Washington. Right? There were folks there that were interested in their own financial interests, their own political interests. What the founders told us is we balanced avarice against avarice and greed against greed. They didn't expect that we would have all wonderful, godly, saintly men in government. They created a system of checks and balances because they specifically told us that we wouldn't. That being said, we should absolutely be doing what you said. We should be trying to elect godly men and women who will uphold their oath of office. It's just the founders understood human nature well enough to know that wasn't the solution to create a balance in government. So we're going to do, I think, one more question, Cam.
Okay, right here.
Okay.
Talk a lot about the federal government doing too much.
We can't hear you. Can we get you closer to the microphone or something?
You talked a lot about the federal government doing too much, spending too much, grabbing power, that sort of thing, and that's important. But in terms of border security, it seems like the government's doing too little, abandoning its duty. Is there anything to be done about that through the Convention of States?
I didn't hear the whole question. Sorry.
Border security. Can we do anything about that? We're talking about that doing too much.
What's border security about? It's about the rule of law, right? Right?
Well, that's right.
So there's no enforcement of the rule of law.
Right.
Right? That's not the only place there's not enforcement of the rule of law. How about marijuana? It's still a class 1 drug. As far as the DEA is concerned, we're not enforcing that in 3 states. So what happened when we fall down on the rule of law? Bad things happen, 1. Number 2, people lose confidence in the rule of law. Right. All right. One of the things that ought to come out of this convention, which did until President George Bush President George W. Bush was president, is that the Attorney General, by Constitution, works for us, not the president. Right?
Correct.
Right? Except that's not the practice anymore. Right? So what we have to do is we have to make that formalized within the Constitution. So what do you do? What do you do about, people aren't xenophobic. people are disgusted that the rule of law is not being enforced. They don't hate Hispanics.
Married to one.
They hate they hate the fact that the rule of law is not being applied properly. And if you're not going to apply it there, why should it apply to me now? The glue that holds this country together is the belief that the rule of law is fair. When that starts getting undermined, the country's going to fall apart.
Nation of law is not then.
So the point is can we do something about it?
Yes.
The first thing that will happen is if we have a convention of states, the rule of law will start becoming supreme again.
It's going to do a lot. Appreciate that.
This is the last one? Okay, last question.
One thing that I always, of course, I've been studying this issue on the Constitutional Convention, Article 5, Convention of States, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it's real important what you call it, because
Yes,
this
it
isn't a
is.
constitutional convention.
Well,
No, it's not. And so I want to clarify that with you. It is a convention of states to amend the Constitution.
okay, well, one thing I do look at is the different politicians and their stands on different issues. And when I'm making a decision too, as many of us do, and a lot of Americans today don't read, they just kind of go by what the politician says. So having that said, Senator Coburn, you voted for the very unpopular $700 billion Wall Street banker bailout known as TARP in 2008. And before Senator Obama ran for president, you said that someday he would run for president and he'd make a fine president. Now, fast forward to 2016.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to see that second part of that
Let me
quote.
finish, Senator. Now, fast forward to 2016. You have trashed nearly every GOP candidate. No, you are not going to.
Yes, we are. Not what we're here for. We're not here to
No, let her talk. I'm a big boy.
Always talking about the left not being tolerant now. You be tolerant. Ms. Fuller, could you please push it, stand aside?
Oh, please.
Now, fast forward to
Is there a question?
Yes,
One
there is.
question.
Get the question out.
No speeches.
Ask your question.
Let her talk. Now, fast forward to 2016, actually, every GOP candidate running for president saying they lack integrity, they're not ready for
Call the question. Call the
Yet
question.
you are quoted on MSNBC praising Hillary Clinton, saying, I think Hillary's experience would make her a very effective president for women. Really, Senator? And now you're asking, are we
Call the question.
Be quiet so I can ask a
Question, making a statement.
Are we fellow conservatives and patriots not to take calls and question any politician's judgment who has voted this way and made the statements you're presently making now? And now you're asking us to follow down this path, promoting what our own Governor Abbott, and you can go to his Texas plan, he says it no less than 5 times, he calls it a constitutional convention.
So what is your question?
My question to you, Senator, is how can you accept with the voting record on this and your statements you made, you're asking us now to follow you on this constitution or convention of states or whatever you want to call it? I think not.
You give me my delegate anytime.
You're through, and it's my turn to answer. Take the mic away.
Yeah, turn that off.
Here's the answer. My faith guides what I do. Did I make mistakes in the Senate? You did, in terms of some of my votes. I wasn't always kind to people that didn't agree with me. I made lots of mistakes. I never said Hillary would make a fine president, and I never said Barack Obama would. I said he will probably run for president. So your quotes have a little added on. Number 2 is, do you actually trust what MSNBC says? Nobody left the United States Senate. No, you've had your talk. I'm going to give the answer. Nobody, I'm going to finish my answer. Nobody left the United States Senate with a higher conservative rating in the history of the Senate than I did. Nobody left the Senate with more free opinions on both sides of the aisle than I do. There's a reason for that. It's because I treat opposition with the same respect I treat my friends. And so I'm happy for you to say whatever you want about me. They said it in Washington all the time. It doesn't bother me at all because they said, no, they're not facts. You're entitled to your opinions, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts.
That's it.
Trump got 34% of the independent vote in New Hampshire. Trump got 34% of the independent vote in New Hampshire. Hillary lost.
Some people are starting to file up. I'm going to end with the closing prayer by Pastor Sutton Brody. If you'd like to come.
Who better?
I hope tonight was educating for everybody. It's, I hope that that's what next time.
Let us stand up, please. Thank you, Senator, for coming. Mark, thank you for coming. You've answered a lot of questions and raised a lot of questions. Eternal God, our Father, as we prepare to depart from this place, we pray that we would carefully consider the argumentations, the representations that have been presented to us tonight. Grant to us wisdom and perspective. Give to us an understanding so that we may factor all of these ideas together and come to the right conclusion that is best for our nation, best for the rule of law, best for our Constitution. Bless each one who is here, those who are in favor and those who are not. In the precious and glorious name of Christ we pray. Amen.